Hey everyone, Reed here with Big Strong Book, and today I'm going to be talking about A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Guin. This book is a long time coming. Um, I have known about the Earthsea books, about Ursula K. Guin, about Le Guin as an author for, ever since I was a teenager. And I've always had her in my mind of, sci-fi fantasy authors that I want to get to. But then I think when I had done a little digging into Earthsea and seen, or when I saw that it was considered children's literature or proto YA, I think teenage me was turned off by that. I was like, no, while I may have read YA or children's literature when I was 9, 10 years old, I'm not going to do that now. I'm above that. That was the big thing. And what's funny is that apparently Le Guin in critical essays kind of had that opinion of that kind of literature as a whole. And I'm not saying that that's right by any means, but that was kind of the bias that I had coming into this. I'm like, no, I'm better than that. Been there, done that. I don't need any more of it. I've moved beyond it. But I think this book was a reminder to me of the power of storytelling and storytelling in such a pure form. And when I say pure, because that was one of the in thinking about this book and internalizing it, pure was the word that came out. But when I'm like, okay, what do I mean by pure? Pure fantasy, pure storytelling. I think it's that Le Guin reaches for like a mythical, almost a mythology. Not to say that she's building a mythology. I mean, there is, lore and mythology that the characters within this world discuss, but it's just, I don't know. This book was just incredible. And, it's like, where has this been all my life? And well, it's been shunned by me all of my life. And but as they say, better late than never. So this book concerns a sorcerer named Ged, or also known as Sparrowhawk. And this is very much so a coming-of-age story. You see a lot of the prototypes of coming-of-age stories, particularly I've seen some comparisons of A Wizard of Earthsea in particular being compared to the Harry Potter series. Really, honestly, the only comparison to Harry Potter that you could make, or that J.K. Rowling may have pulled something from this, was there's a magic school, essentially. In its base form, there's a magic school that the protagonist is a wizard. He's a wizard. You're a wizard, Ged, and goes off to a magic school. The magic school part of it doesn't make up a majority of the novel either, and this completely tells a complete story. And I think it's true because it's about, at its core, it's self-discovery. You as the reader, you learn more about yourself coming out of it. And that's the most important thing that literature can do. And this is literature of the highest nature. As I was reading it with Le Guin's prose style, with her mastery, honestly, if I had read this when I was, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, around the age when, you're reading Narnia and Harry Potter and books like that, I don't think I would have liked Earthsea. I really don't. I'm gonna be honest. Had I read this, I'm not saying that. I mean, children could definitely read this and I think get something out of it. But I think and I'm not saying that this shouldn't be considered children's literature, because when I think back to what makes children's literature great, I'm a Harry Potter apologist. You know, J.K. Rowling in her views notwithstanding, the seven Harry Potter books are, were a cornerstone of my childhood, a cornerstone of how I got into reading. Harry Potter was such a big reason as to why I became a reader. And I'm sure it is for many of you all as well. For those of us of a certain age, Harry Potter was our childhood, both the books and the movies. I have fond memories of when the movies would come out, of when the new books would come out. Um, and but this, and that is about and the Harry Potter books in particular is about, coming of age and defeating a great evil and overcoming something so that you can be stronger on the other side. And that is Wizard of Earthsea. But I think Wizard of Earthsea, you know, a one-to-one comparison with this and Harry Potter, I might be tempted to go with Earthsea just because of Le Guin's mastery of prose that is evident from this, the simple nature of the story. And when I say simple nature, I mean that there's a universal thematic current that is running through it, like what I mentioned of the coming of age, of learning about the consequences of one's actions, and learning to mature as an individual on the maturity of thought. That's another part of it, is the maturity of intellect and thought as Ged learns. So I'll set the scene a little bit. And there's a lot of islands. And to talk about the world building of this book, first of all, it's fascinating, like an archipelago and islands, and that's the communities. Another thing that's very interesting, and I'll kind of point this out in reading. So Le Guin does something where, in traditional fantasy, especially fantasy when this was written in the 60s, the races of characters might just be, European, Western European, Caucasian, whatever you want to call it, white characters. And she inverts that with this. I think she describes Ged as kind of of being copper skinned, and many characters, and almost every character in this book is darker skinned. And what's interesting is, it's in that's such a fascinating bit, and the sociological implications, I think, of her character design, if you want to call it that. I know her father was an anthropologist. I know that side of things deeply interested her, and apparently I've never seen it, and I really have no desire to see it after reading about it, but there was an adaptation of Earthsea in the early 2000s, I believe, on the Sci-Fi Channel, and they made Ged and many of the other characters white, in a direct affront to the character design, or the wishes of Le Guin, and she distanced herself from that, and she said this is not true to the spirit of the books at all. But even beyond that, there is, you get a lot of the universal tropes. You get the wizened masters and wizards who teach the protagonist, you may want to use your power for the best way you can, and to do all of these things, but it's with great power, with great responsibility. It's the whole, Yoda in Dagobah trying to rein Luke in and say, you really got to think this through. You really need to consider what you do before you just rush into something. And Ged is in that phase of, the young Peter Parker, the young Luke Skywalker, where he's finding himself gifted with being able to weave spells and everything, and but he learns through consequence. And I won't say plot details, but there's one thing he does to kind of just prove, and that's so much a part of it, to prove to another student that I'm great. I'm the best here. I can do whatever I want. I know types of magic that you would never even dream of, and in doing so, unleashes a pretty terrible thing. But of course, it's ultimately terrible to him because he has to reap the consequences of it, and it's something that haunts him, and it's something that gnaws at Ged, and provides the energy for the rest of the plot of the book. But as he goes to other places, and communes with dragons, and he's within this new world, who's while also at the same time communicating with the old world, and you get that side of it too. And you know I'm just, the books like this remind me why I like reading. I'll just say that. It's I have nothing but praise for this. And but again, as I said, like I wonder what 10-year-old me, had I read this, what 10-year-old me would have thought. I don't think I would have appreciated it as much. Um I was just I was blown away. I was almost, I mean, I don't want to say I was to the point of tears by the end, but it was just an incredible reading experience. And I think I'm lucky to read one of these books like this a year or every few years. But and now I'm so excited to dive into not only the other books within this series, but everything else that Le Guin ever wrote. Um, Now I understand. Now I understand. I mean, I had heard about all the awards she had won, the praise for decades that she had had as one of the very best of both fantasy and science fiction. So I've seen the fantasy side here, and this is, I mean, on the back of the book, I'll read this thing from the back. With millions of copies sold worldwide, Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea cycle has earned a treasured place on the shelves of fantasy lovers everywhere, alongside the works of such beloved authors as J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Yeah, you know what? She, maybe even in certain respects, you know, I love Tolkien. Tolkien is the fantasy lodestone and always will be. Maybe not the three of them. I would maybe say Tolkien and Le Guin. Again, this might be a premature judgment on my part. This is, after all, the only thing I've read. I just adored this book. And um yeah, it I'm really looking forward to reading the other ones. And it's it's almost I know that Le Guin passed away a few years ago, and um yeah. And how cool is it that she and Philip K. Dick not only attended the same high school, but were part of the same graduating class in Berkeley, California. Two literary geniuses went to high school. I mean, I'm sure that they're not the only case of, you know, great writers, or great anybody, where they went to high school together and were in the same graduating class. But yeah, um, again, I don't want to get into plot specifics. I mean, if you're familiar with kind of that hero's journey, this book won't be foreign to you in that respect. But, amidst all, I love modern fantasy. Don't get me wrong. I love modern fantasy. I love epic fantasy. I'll probably never tire of it. But it's books like these that have the immense literary aspirations. And I'm not trying to say that in a pretentious way, but it's the literary aspirations of a book like A Wizard of Earthsea that are the biggest breath of fresh air that you could ever ask for. Um, yeah, it's, and now what I am interested in reading next is reading Gene Wolfe too. Um, you know, one thing that has been compared to this book is Gene Wolfe's Wizard Knight duology, which I own and have tried to read, but it's tough. Like that one is like pure fantasy in a much more difficult way because it's subsumed in mythology. But I'm getting off track with talking about Gene Wolfe. Um, yeah, I I don't know. Maybe who knows? Maybe I'm viewing this through some kind of like rose tinted nostalgia glasses for something I never actually experienced because this is this is 100% the first time I have ever read this. I never read a word of it ever in my life. So, it's not like nostalgia. It's not, it wouldn't be like me rereading, I think, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, where it would be a total nostalgia blast or Harry Potter and the Half, really any of the seven Harry Potter books. And then Lord of the Rings, of course. And even, it mentioned C.S. Lewis. Even if I were to read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe again, and the Narnia books are ones I've been meaning to reread for a long time, but have not. Again, part of that is that bias of saying, "Well, I'm better than this." Well, you know, I I I think, and I fully appreciate the value of good children's literature with this book. Um, yeah, but who knows if I read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe nowadays, I might have those nostalgia glasses for it. It might be concealing something that maybe isn't really all that great. For all I know, again, I'm not trying to disparage. I'm not trying to disparage the Narnia books or C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis is a great writer, even beyond the Narnia books. Um, but man, Le Guin, I know it's great when you hear about a great writer and you read something by it, and not only is everything you've heard about them affirmed, but you understand why they have a place in the pantheon, if that makes sense. And the great thing is that this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not like this was a one and done. There's not only are there more Earthsea books, but there's more science fiction books. And I've heard that the Earthsea books, the first three, are more, more geared towards a younger audience, but then the other ones came out decades later and grow more mature as the audience progresses. And I love it when especially when children's series do that. But again, if you're looking for something that even if you're not looking for children's literature, like I am not somebody who reads YA or children's literature with great regularity. It's a rarity for me. But this, I think, reaffirms fantasy at its best, fantasy that aspires to be a true work of art, and to say something about who we are as individuals. Um, it's incredible. So, if you've read A Wizard of Earthsea, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.